Alright, today's video is on the IMI Galil series. Now, I just finished up a blog article, so feel free to read that for a detailed history write-up. But I thought we'd go over briefly the different variations and styles. I am holding what is basically the model the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, used in general issue during the 70s and 80s. It's heavy. This is the Galil ARM assault rifle machine gun variant, which was again the standard variation that the Israeli Defense Forces used. It has an 18-inch barrel capped with a M16 style flash hider. Has a folding light bipod. The bipod can also be used as a wire cutter. Up here you can see a hole like that. The brackets that hold the bipod on, people talk about how they can be used, let me get the sling out of the way for you, as a bottle opener. I don't know if that was intentional by the designers, but you really can't open a bottle with one of these. So either way, it does function effectively as a bottle opener. Most of the early ARMs, well I should say all the early, and even most of the production models did have wood handguards such as these. They're square, they're not the most comfortable, but they do help with cooling because internally they're open down here letting the barrel cool. The top is open, it also lets the barrel cool. So they basically are there just to protect you from the barrel's heat. It also has a folding carry handle, not unlike the one found in the FNFAL. The problem with it is it's light and it doesn't balance very well. The weapon tends to tilt when you grab it. So a lot of the later ARMs lacked it. It has this charging handle that is upswept, which allows you to grab it normally, as on any other AK style gun, or to reach around the dust cover and grab it like that with your offhand if you need to. It has an ambidextrous selector. It has a standard AK style here, as you see. Then it has a thumb style on the left side. It's pretty effective. It also has flip up front and rear night sights. These are dead, of course, but they work. When you put the rear one up, you flip the rear sight into a medium position like that, so you can see through it. The PEEP rear sight has settings for 0 to 300 meters and from 300 to 500 meters and beyond. The front hooded post is adjustable through the top. It screws up and down for elevation, and also is similar to on a FAL rear sight. It has screws that can be adjusted side to side to move it for windage. Has a side folding tubular steel buttstock, very sturdy. Try and get this folded back on camera. That's the problem as always. Very heavy duty. It has a plastic or nylon cheek piece here. This is an earlier stock that has what they call a curved butt plate or hooked butt plate. Later they would go to a straight one. They did it so it would rest against the shoulder. Has a relatively oversized pistol grip for an AK style weapon. Since this is a semi-auto, it has a Tapco G2 trigger group in it. Has a somewhat oversized mag release. It has this protective flap here. It's based on a milled receiver. This weapon here is a semi-automatic only, of course. It was assembled by HillBilly Firearms in Tennessee from a 90s imported kit with a demilled receiver. This is a reweld. The front half was rewelded to the back and then made semi-automatic only. Did a very good job. Again, HillBilly Firearms is pretty much the name when it comes to Galils. But yeah, this is has the original markings on the side in Hebrew, which is nice. It also has The lightning cut, which you don't see on most semi-autos that you find on a lot of the military guns on the side there. And is otherwise very well standard ARM. The Galil has an interesting history behind it, and again, for that, read the blog. But it was the Cliff's Notes version. It was developed by Israel Galili in the late '60s. It went into testing and was adopted into service in 1972 by the IDF. The idea he had was, after the 6 Days War of '67, the FAL proved that it wasn't very durable in sand, dirt, grime, the desert, basically. But the AK performed very well. So they decided to mesh the AK, especially the operating system, the bolt with the long stroke gas piston, the relatively loose tolerances to allow for sand, with the elements from the M16, such as the sight style, the 5.56 or 223 NATO caliber, and also some elements from the old FAL, such as this stock, very similar to the FAL para stock, carry handle, having a light bipod. The light bipod is not FAL style, but a lot of the FALs did use a light bipod, so just that kind of notion. So kind of combining the best elements. There was also a lot of influence from the Finnish Valmet, the RK62. Some sources claim that early Galils were built on Valmet receivers. Unfortunately, there's never been any evidence to substantiate this claim, but it's a claim that's often made. But there's definitely a connection to the Valmet. You can see it in the trigger guard, the way the receiver is machined, and the front sight base and all of that. So you can definitely see where the RK62 inspired Galil and did that. But these were, the ARM version was in service with the IDF infantry throughout the mid to late 70s and 80s. It started to be phased out in favor of the M16 and later the CAR-15 because while this was more reliable in sand and dust than the M16, with regular cleaning the M16 was just as reliable and a little more accurate, more modular, easier to mount scopes and other optics on it, and so on and so forth. And of course, as has been said often, the U.S. basically gave Israel a bunch of M16s and CAR-15s for basically free or low prices, much lower than what IMI could produce the Galil for. So they basically switched their idea and started marketing the Galil overseas, and obtained money for Israel by selling it to nations such as Colombia and South America. South Africa adopted it as the R4, which you'll see in a minute, and it saw service elsewhere in Africa and East Asia, and it proved to be a very reliable, robust gun. Oh, this one has the 50-round extended mag in it. I forgot to mention that. And this is kind of an interesting pouch I found that holds one 50-round mag and one 35-round mag. It's IDF issue. I just think it's kind of cool. You don't see many pouches that hold a short and a tall mag. Well, we'll move on to other Galil variants. Alright, our next member of the Galil family is the SAR, or short assault rifle, short automatic rifle, whatever you want to call it. It operates the same as the ARM, same controls, same sights, still has night sights, all that. The differences are that it had a 13-inch barrel in military service. Now this one has a 16 to be semi-automatic and civilian legal, so just to let you know. The bayonet lug was moved back further on the gas block to work with a shorter barrel. It has a handguard that fully encompasses the bottom of the barrel and a different ferrule on the back because it doesn't have to deal with the bipod or the carry handle. It doesn't have either of those. It has a slightly shorter gas system. I'd say it's about an inch shorter to work with the shorter barrel. This one has the earlier style teak wood handguard that was used up in the mid-70s. It also has the later style straight butt plate versus the curved one you saw. Still has an ambidextrous safety here. This one's pretty stiff. Has a standard 35 round mag in it. It's on a high rapid fire receiver. This was a custom build by a gentleman out in Oklahoma, FFL 07 manufacturer, built from original parts kits. Has an extended flash hider on it. But, yeah, the SAR was just a little bit lighter, shorter. Still has the same reliability and durability of the FAL. Oh, excuse me, of the Galil. It was mostly used by mechanized infantry and tank crews, artillery crews. It was actually the standard issue rifle of the IDF's Armor Corps for 40 years. But these are mostly carried on board vehicles, for them being shorter and lighter. They were also kept around because they didn't have a whole lot of maintenance requirements. So when other units who used their rifles on a regular basis went over to the M16 or Car 15, some kept the SAR around because they could just leave it in the tank or in the truck and not worry about it for a couple of weeks. Even if it got a little sandy or dusty, it'd still run. This was one of the original Galil variations that came out. Of the other one out of the three was the AR, the standard rifle, which was essentially a combination of this one here and the ARM. It had the longer 18-inch barrel of the ARM, but it used the handguard without bipod of the SAR. The AR was not really used by the Israelis. It was mostly for export. It was actually very popular in the USA during the 80s in the civilian market. It was also widely used in South America. But yeah, this is the carbine version, very equivalent to, say, the M4 of the Galil. And yeah, it is just a little bit lighter, shorter, and it has a slightly newer IDF style sling on it here. We'll move on. The next Galil variant up for auction is the Micro, or MAR. Now this is a newer version. The first three, the ARM, the AR, and the SAR, all came out pretty much at the same time in the 70s. The MAR, the Micro, came out in the mid-90s. I think it was first announced in 94 and started to actually see production around 97. As the name suggests, it is a compact version of the Galil. This one here is a more modern take. There's a lot of variations to the Micro Galil. I've tried to straighten them out, but there's just so many. It seems like every time they did a production run, they changed something. This one has the more modern tubular style stock, which is steel coated in polymer. All of it's polymer coated. It is a little bit shorter than the standard Galil stock. It has this nice thick rubber butt pad on it to help reduce felt recoil. All of the Micros have had short barrels, but even there they've changed. The earliest ones had a barrel that was a smidge under 8 inches, 7.8, 7.9, very much like a mini Uzi submachine gun. Then it seems like most of the production models had a barrel that was a little under 8.5, 8.3, 8.4 inches long. However, more recently, IMI, or now IWI, has been offering an 11-inch version as well. So there's at least 3 barrel lengths they do for these. This one, of course, has an original barrel, but it's capped by a permanently affixed suppressor to make it civilian legal. It uses sights that are essentially the same as the mini Uzi. The rear sight has 2 positions, flip, and it is adjustable via the same tool as the mini. Front sight is quite interesting. It's a large post with these protective ears open on the top. The gas block is also different, you can see. The gas piston is essentially the head of the carrier. You can actually see it in here. That's the end of the piston right there. It's very, very short. Thus it has a very short gas tube. It has an extended handguard, and this is the more modern style. So it gives you more room to grip it. It actually rides up onto the receiver, as you can see. The receiver has a large lightning cut underneath this to let the handguard ride up on it. It's held on with a cross bolt screw, so you can take it on and off without having to disassemble the weapon. The top cover is pretty standard Galil. This one has the horizontal charging handle. Some of the others have a vertical one as on standard Galils, and some of the most recent ones even have a left side charging handle with a dust cover that moves. So again, lots of variations there. You'll notice there's no real sling swivels on this gun. I've used Israeli ties to give the snap sling, and this is an original Israeli snap sling, a place to lock on. Still has the left side selector, same mag catch, same trigger guard. This is an Israeli Orlite mag in it, which is pretty common with these. They're quite a bit lighter weight than the steel ones. They still hold 35 round mags. Mechanically, these operate just like a normal Galil, but are just smaller, lighter, and still have a milled receiver, but it has several lightning cuts. There is a large lightning cut in the bolt carrier you can see here too. This is on both sides of it, a little kind of egg-shaped cutout. So they were trying to save as much weight as possible. So yeah. Oh, and the stock, back to it. The hinge is actually integrated as part of the receiver, if you can see. It's actually not a separate unit, so that also helps save a little weight by compacting all that mechanism into the back of the stock. These have been used by Israeli Special Forces, some paratrooper units. They've also been very successful with law enforcement. In fact, this is where this kit came from. It was an old ex-FBI gun that was demilled and built up by HillBilly Firearms on a CNC Warrior receiver. Very well done build. Very nicely put together. And we'll make a great SBR once we can get this big honking fake suppressor off the end of the barrel. But yeah, this kind of completes the Israeli Galil family. We've got one more to show you, and then we'll check in next time. We'll move on. And our last Galil variant today is a clone or copy of the South African R4. The R4, as you may notice, is very similar to the original ARM that you first looked at. It was licensed, built in South Africa by Littleton Engineering. Basically, in the 60s, an embargo was placed on South Africa, which was tightened up in 1977. Up to that point, they had been using the R1, which is a license-built version of the FNFAL. But it was getting dated, and they wanted something new in the .223 caliber, but their options were limited. They eventually settled upon the Israeli Galil and obtained a license to manufacture it domestically. They started to test it out in 1980, and it went into military service in 1982. What the R4 they adopted was, again, very similar to the ARM with a few important differences, mostly cosmetic or ergonomic. The buttstock on this thing is longer, same style of stock, but it's longer, about 1 inch longer, and it's made out of polymer. This seems to be a later buttstock as it has a integrated polymer, if I can get on there, butt plate with ribbing. The earlier ones I've witnessed made from the early to mid 80s had a rubber butt plate there, but for whatever reason it seems like that rubber deteriorated. So the one I saw had just completely cracked and torn apart. So I bet that's why they went to the more this style. So they had that stock. The dust covers are virtually identical, if not identical, so nothing to look at there. Ditto for the pistol grips. The South African grips are a little bit different in shaping, but then again, the Israeli grip changed over time. Same ambidextrous selector here. Same style cocking handle. The handguard is different. It's longer. I'd say at least 1 inch longer, and of course made of polymer. Only the very early R4s had wood handguards, but most all of them had these polymer handguards. They're kind of made out of a soft, flexible polymer too. They don't have the heat shield inside like the Israeli guns. It does not have a carry handle. The R4 never did. Strangely, all of the R4 handguards have the hole for a carry handle, but even though they never used one, you can see the ferrule doesn't have a attachment point for it. Has the same style of folding light bipod. This one's pretty stiff, which is good. The R4 did not have a bayonet lug. It had a larger front sight protector, as you can see, much larger, with a smaller post inside. It was intended to make it a little more accurate, easier to aim. And finally, the gas tube has this lip here. It was meant to help it fit against the gas block better and also keep the handguard retaining lever down so it can't flip up all the way. So just retention there. Has the 18-inch barrel, same as an ARM. Like I said, it went to service in the 80s. It's still the standard service rifle for the South African Defense Forces today. They also made the R5, which was a licensed copy of the SAR with a 13-inch barrel. It had the other South African improvements or alterations, such as stock and larger front sight ring. Then there was finally the R6, which many call a micro Galil. It's not so much a micro, it's more a further shortened SAR. It has an 11-inch barrel. It's more of a PDW. That one came out in the 90s. But yeah, you don't see a lot online about the R4, R5, and R6 family. This one here was assembled by HillBilly Firearms using what South African parts could be found, and the rest Israeli. I was lucky enough a few years ago to get to handle and fire an original LM5, a South African gun, and semi-automatic version anyway. But I can say after handling it, this one is a good approximation. The LM5 had a lot of the same features and just felt about the same as far as the finish and everything. So he did a very good job replicating the whole Littleton South African feel. But yeah, this is just one of the licensed variations of the Galils that's out there. And again, for more information on the Galil, check out the blog, and I hope you enjoyed the shooting portion of the video. And as always, this is me, Shiko, and thanks for tuning in.